This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please, clerk?
Chairman Goodman,
Here.
Mayor Brummel,
Here.
Alderman Ashour,
Here.
Alderman Berry,
Here.
Alderman Bevere,
Here.
Alderman Davalos,
Here.
Alderman Crucial,
Here.
Alderman Widener, Alderman Wilson.
Here.
You have a quorum. Staff, City Administrator Coakley.
I'm here. I also want to note Alderman Widener did call and or contact me over the weekend, and he'd be excused tonight. He will not be here.
Thank you. City Administrator White.
Here.
Finance Director Dahlstrom.
Here.
Chief Toronto.
Here.
Senior Civil Engineer Hawking.
Here.
And myself, Deputy City Clerk Rivetti.
Thank you. I want to note once again that this meeting is being recorded and that it's being held virtually in accordance with the Public Act 101-0640. I'm going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Instead of saying it along with me, please say it silently to yourself. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This is the time that we set aside for citizens' comments in the meeting. We want to go first to people who are present in person at City Hall. If you wish to speak, step up, and the city administrator will let me know if there are people there in person who wish to make their comment now. Identify yourselves and then we'll go in order. And if you wish to speak on particular items that are on the agenda and the business of the meeting tonight, then let us know and we will acknowledge you at that time.
Thank you. We have one person in the audience, but we have no one that wishes to speak tonight.
Thank you, Administrator Coakley. Second, if there are any citizens' comments from people on the phone, people who have called in, this is the time that we would ask you to say your name so that we can acknowledge you, and then we will call on you one at a time so that you can speak if anyone is on the line. All right, I don't hear anyone. This is the only chance that we will have for citizen comments. Other than that, we do have 2 email submissions, 2 comments, and those will be read on particular agenda items as part of the business of the meeting when those items come up. All right, so we'll move on now to officials and staff comments, starting with the mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have nothing to add tonight.
Thank you. Alderman Ashour.
No comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Berry.
No comment.
Thank you. Alderman Bevere.
No comment.
Thank you. Alderman Davalos.
No comment tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Crucial.
No comment, thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Widener is excused. Alderman Wilson.
No comment.
Thank you. I would like, if it's all right, to just take a moment to acknowledge the 200,000 people in the United States, at least, who have passed due to the COVID-19 epidemic. We passed that unfortunate milestone this weekend, and I would just like us to take a moment in silence to acknowledge those people we have lost. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the business of the meeting. We're starting tonight with a presentation of the April 30th, 2020 Police Pension Actuarial Valuation Report. I'm going to go first to Finance Director Dahlstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Annually at this time of year and in conjunction with the annual audit process, we do go through and have the police pension fund actuarial valuation done. I'd like to present Bob Reitz from the firm of Lauterbach and Amon to present the valuation for this year, and note that this will be incorporated into the tax levy ordinance, which we will discuss in November. Bob, up to you.
Good evening, everybody. Hope you can hear me. Again, I'm Bob Reitz with Lauterbach and Amon, actuary for the pension fund. We spoke earlier this year with the pension board and went over these results, and we have some high-level information to provide to council here. And when we're talking about the police fund and the recommended contribution, this year we're looking at a recommended contribution of $1.19 million. Which is about $150,000 increase over last year of $1.04 million. And we'll go into some of the reasons of why that increased so substantially in a few moments. Your funded percentage went down by about 72 basis points. Right now you're at 71.77% funded, which is still well in excess of a lot of the police and fire pension funds in the state of Illinois, with a median of those funds being around 56%. Right now, your unfunded liability, so the amount that you're behind, is about $9.4 million. Okay. So I spoke a little bit about we had some changes that were pretty substantial this year, and really we have three. The first change is, as everybody knows, investment returns were probably pretty low as April 30th year end. You're going along pretty well through December 31st. Then COVID hit, and then all pension funds took a pretty big nosedive there in March and recovered a little bit in April. We have an expected return of 6.75%, and this year your annual return from May 1st 19 through April 30th of 20 was only 1.06%. So to the extent that you in actuarial terms, you lost, about 5.75% over the year. That's an unfortunate circumstance. We do have some methodologies in place to alleviate the impact of those, and mainly being the use of an actuarial value of assets versus a market value of assets. But that's one of the changes that we saw this year that made that contribution requirement go up. A second piece was in relation to the consolidation bill that everybody should know was signed over December, in which, as part of that consolidation bill, they enhanced benefits payable to Tier 2 members. So as part of that, those enhancements include increasing the pay cap to Tier 2 members. So previously that pay cap would increase at 1/2 of a COLA rate or 3%, whichever is less. And what they did this year is they removed that 1/2 and made it the full increase. So you're going to see an increase on the pay cap for Tier 2 members. In addition, another Tier 2 benefit was previously they used a final 8-year averaging when they determined the final salary and determination of benefits. They reduced that final 8-year averaging to a 4-year averaging. So what does that mean? As a part of those plan changes, it's going to increase your actuarial liability by about $269,000, and that's responsible for about $86,000 of that increase in contribution. So out of that $150,000 increase, approximately half of that is due to these Tier 2 benefit changes. And the third main thing that happened this year was we at LNA, every 4 or 5 years, we conduct a large-scale experience study, which means we consolidate all the pensioner and retiree and personnel information we have for all the approximately 325 police and fire pension funds we work on in the state, and we do experience studies to come up with representative retirement rates, termination rates, salary scale assumptions, and those sorts of things. In addition, the main assumption that was changed was your mortality assumption. So previously we used what was called the RP 2014 mortality tables, and the short of that is that was based on some Social Security information and private sector experience conducted by the Society of Actuaries a few years ago. More recently, the Society of Actuaries completed a new study using public plans as their basis for coming up with a mortality rate. So they gathered information from 79 large-scale public retirement funds, similar to IMRF or Texas Teachers or CalPERS or those sorts of really large funds, to come up with over 40 million life years of experience for mortality for public sector employees. And as a subset of that, they have a specific table for what they call public safety or police and fire correction officers. So we updated the mortality table to use that new public safety subset of the new mortality table for public employees. As a result of all those changes, your liability increased by about $500,000 and your contribution went up by about $45,000 due to that. You did have some demographic changes that did reduce your contribution. You had a couple members terminate vested, so they no longer are eligible for a full retirement benefit. They're going to have a lesser retirement. So the plan took a gain in that case and reduced your contribution by about $49,000. And then other than that, just some other demographic and expected items really remain the balance of that $150,000 net increase in contribution. Does anybody have any questions about any of that?
Thank you. We'll go through alphabetically, starting with the mayor.
Good explanation. I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Ashour.
Thank you. Excellent job. It was easy to understand.
Thank you. Alderman Berry.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Bevere.
I have no questions.
Thank you. Alderman Zavalos.
Yes, this was really, this was almost enjoyable to read because I learned things more than I have in the past. So it's organized really well. I guess I have a comment, or maybe it's a question. I'm assuming that we are typical for everybody else, that all kinds of municipalities are struggling and now are being affected by the same things that you've talked about tonight and are looking at the same sort of changes that we've experienced.
Yes, indeed. We've had this conversation many times, and it's never fun bearing bad news. And it is, some substantial changes that you've seen. What's good though is your fund was in a better position to absorb these changes by being over 70% funded to begin with, and having a historical contribution of putting in over 120% of what we would recommend you to put in. So you've been ahead of the game there, and it's really benefited you in this case that your changes were not nearly as severe as what some other funds we work with are having to deal with.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would second what Alderman Davalos said. I thought that this was clearer to read and more easily digestible than many such reports we've read in the past. I did have one question though about page 15, the valuation of the fund assets. Maybe part of it is my confusion over gains and losses being sort of switched, which ones are negative in parentheses and which ones aren't. But could you explain this a little bit more about how the actuarial value of the assets is 104+% of the market value of the assets?
Sure. So as I indicated before, we have a market value is what you would typically state, everybody knows what market value is. And to the extent that you don't hit a 6.75% return each year, you would have what we would call an actuarial loss due to investments. So as our nomenclature in the report goes, if we show something in a parenthetical, that is a gain, which means you would have hit above that 6.75%. And when we have those investment gains and losses occurring each and every year, we don't have to recognize all those immediately. So that's the concept of the actuarial value of assets. What we do is we recognize only 20% of that gain or loss in any individual year. So you may, for example, have a loss in one year, a gain in the following year, each of those individual years' gains or losses are amortized over a straight line over a 5-year period. And so what the 104% means is right now you have an actuarial value of assets that's larger than your market value, which means that right now there's some losses that have occurred due to investments in the prior 5 years that have not been fully recognized. So you will have some losses coming into the fund in the next coming years, assuming you hit your target 6.75% each year going forward. Does that make sense?
I think so, but it does surprise me a little bit to see, I mean, the $1.279 million is the loss you have here for FYE 2020. But then there are also losses in the previous years and only 1 year with a gain, which surprised me a little bit going back. I hadn't thought we had losses in 3 of the last 4 years. But actuarial losses are not actual losses. It's just, if I'm following you, you're saying that the amount that they were projecting at a 6.75% rate of return would have been a bigger gain even than was actually realized.
Correct. Yeah. So looking at your page 15, where we have the full amount column, that was the total gain or loss that was earned in that particular year. So fiscal year 2020, you had a loss of 1.28 million, of which 1,023,000 is still being deferred into the 4 future years. And we do that going forward for all 4 of those years. Fiscal year 16, this would have been the fifth year, which fiscal 16 would have been fully amortized. So right now you have total $1.11 million of net losses outstanding that still have to be recognized in the upcoming years. And in fiscal 21, should you have a large gain, that would then offset those future deferrals or those future losses that are being deferred.
Okay, so then if over the past 5 years we have a loss of over $1 million that's unrealized, then how can the rate of return on investments actuarially still be over 4%? What am I missing?
Because they are unrealized. Because they haven't been reflected yet into that calculation. So really, when you know, the way we determine our net investment gains and losses on an actuarial basis, probably the methodology is slightly different than how an investment advisor may do so. We have a formulaic interpretation, so we're really doing a reflection of last year's actuarial value to this year's actuarial value, including the net investment gains or losses that were incurred in that year to get to those applicable percentages. So if looking at, are you looking at page 16 of the report?
15, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so what's going to happen is when you have gains and losses that are being deferred and recognized over future years and used to offset each other, really that's what the whole concept of the actuarial value of assets is meant to do, is to keep things a little bit grouped a little bit tighter and to eliminate peaks and valleys of how those assets are going to recur year after year. So it's to make your amounts a little bit more predictable, a little bit more level and each year going forward.
Yeah, I think the question that you're answering is about what amortization means, and I'm not asking that question. But
okay.
It's okay. I think we can move on. I feel like for that.
Apologize if I didn't understand your question.
It's okay. The second question I had was on page 19, where you said that the total actuarial accrued liability has increased by approximately $2 million from the prior valuation.
Yes.
So is that because of the 2 new retirements by vested members, or is that because of the accounting changes as a result of the consolidation legislation.
I'm going to refer you back to page 11. This will explain it a little bit better. Okay, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, so if you look at the top of the page, we have a column of actuarial liability and we have a column of recommended contribution. We would have expected the actuarial liability to increase by 1.78 million this year. And what that would be, those expectations are based on interest on your existing liability. It would be what we call the normal cost or the accrual of benefits by all the active officers. And then we take out the benefits that are expected to be paid throughout the year. So we would have normally expected that liability to increase by 1.88 million. Then going to the bottom half of the page, we have demographic and financial items that are outside of what our expectation. For example, salary increases were less than expected. So we've had an actuarial liability gain in that instance. We had the demographic changes of 417,000. Those were the two terminated members that I indicated previously. The assumption changes increased your liability by 503,000. The plan changes increase your liability by 269,000. And if you sum those, that bottom total amount of 256,000 with the 1.788 million, that's how you get to that 2,044,000 that you saw on page, what was it, 19?
Right.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. All right. Those are my questions. Let's go on to Alderman Krischel.
No questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's go on to Alderman Wilson.
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. This concludes this item. It is an informational only item, so we don't need any motion. Thank you very much, Bob, for your presentation.
Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
All right, we're moving on to item number 2, an informational discussion on the citywide waste collection service. I do have a citizen's comment to read, but let's begin with Assistant City Administrator White.
Thank you. So the city's contract, which is currently with Waste Management, expires in April of 2021. Staff is seeking direction from the council on the type of waste collection program to be provided to residents beginning in May of next year. So while this item is listed as informational, we are looking for some direction. The memo in the backup provides 4 different options to consider. Currently, the city's program includes a choice to use a sticker program, or residents can elect to have monthly cart service at a flat fee. This option, or the options that are included in the backup, include continuing this current model or looking at switching entirely to cart service. There's a couple of different reasons for that. There's some benefits to cart service, which were outlined when council was previously considering the waste contracts, which included allowing residents to only pay for the amount of garbage that they're actually having collected, which is one benefit of the current sticker program. The other is that it was thought to encourage recycling because you're not paying for additional garbage to throw out if you can recycle. Unfortunately, it seems like the recycling part of that, we're seeing more and more contamination in recycling, and I think Vaughn will talk about that a little bit more from Waste Management when he goes over his proposal, so I don't want to steal his thunder, but we're seeing some contamination in the recycling, which seems to indicate that that's not exactly coming to fruition. The other piece of this is haulers are no longer really supportive of the sticker program. Reasons being that the cart service is a little bit more reliable. It provides a steady stream and known quantity of revenue coming in. The carts are easier to handle, which in theory reduces the risk of injury to the haulers because they're able to use the mechanical arms that come with the truck, and those are fitted to the carts that they provide. And they also reduce the amount of garbage that's being blown around when there's high wind than the typical waste recycling units that people may use other than the carts. Because they're not really supportive of the sticker program, I think that the pricing, if we go out to bid, is going to be reflective of that. We're seeing increases every year with the sticker program, as we've seen over the last 5 years. And you'll see in the proposal that we got from Waste Management. Before I ask Vaughn to speak on the proposal that they provided to extend, I wanted to touch a little bit on why we've offered that as an option to extend the program. We've had pretty good service with Waste Management over the last 5 years. They've worked really well with the city. It's been consistent. We've had few complaints from residents about the service, and when we have had complaints, they've been quick to resolve those complaints for us. And so generally the relationship has been good, and continuing service with the current provider obviously reduces the changes that would be involved with going with a new waste hauler if we decided to go out to bid. So before we move on into talking specifically about the options, I would like to ask Vaughn Kirschner to talk a little bit about the details of his proposal.
Well, thank you, Christina. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. Christina did a great job.
When you're ready, I put Dancing with the Stars on TV on 7. So when you want to watch it, it'll be there.
Someone needs to mute themselves. Whoever caller 3 is, could you please mute yourself? Thank you.
That was just my commercial. So, anyways, just to get started again, Christina did a great job of kind of setting the table for what I'd like to talk to you about tonight. Before I get into some of the highlights of our proposal, just kind of want to give you a little bit of background of what's happened over the last 5 years. As she mentioned, the contract expires the end of next April, so April 30th and 21. The city of Warrenville and Waste Management have had a long relationship, and we'd like to see that continue, and that is why we're proposing a contract extension. And as she said, the current contract provides residents the option of sticker service or cart service. Now, as far as sticker service, over the last 5 years, sticker sales have dropped from 120,000 in 2015 to 59,000 in 2019. That's a 50% decline. Sticker usage in Warrenville is now at an all-time low of 0.44 stickers per home per month. That is the lowest. We have several sticker customers or sticker contracts. That is the lowest that we have. Now, while sticker sales have decreased, cart usage has increased from 155 in 2015 to approximately 1,400 in 2019, or 35% of your residents. Warrenville is growing, and as families move in, they are overwhelmingly choosing carts. Based on this information, the city would appear to be in a good position to move to cart service. The trend is, on the whole, to move towards cart service. We are proposing a 2-cart service for all residents. This includes a refuse and recycle cart. Waste Management would retain ownership of the carts and provide routine maintenance of them. As Christina highlighted several times, the benefits of carts that the city and its residents would see are highlighted on page 6 of our proposal. I'll just quickly go over them. There's several of them. Cleanliness, material is containerized, minimize blowing material, especially on the windy days, and seems like we're having more of those. Uniformity, cars all look the same. Ease of use, it's a 2-wheel cart, so there's no more lifting, bending, in reaching for containers or bags. Safety kind of goes with the ease of use. Sizes, we're proposing a 96 for residents and a 35 for seniors. It's very durable. Our carts are made out of stronger plastic than you would buy, for example, a cart at Home Depot or Menards. It would eliminate the small recycling bin, so you could collect more in one cart. We'd be able to implement, which is really key, as Christina had pointed out, a curbside recycling education program. This program has been very successful in other communities that we have rolled it out in. Contamination is a big issue now, where 1 in every 4 items that go into a recycle cart is contaminated, or is a contaminant, I should say. So by going to a cart, we can then implement this recycling education program. And of course, by going to a cart, there would be no more stickers for the refuse. Because with the refuse, we'd be offering, again, like I said, a 96-gallon cart, unlimited, no stickers. Seniors would be eligible for an unlimited 35-gallon cart, no sticker. And there would be 1 free bulk item weekly. As far as recycle goes, you get a 64-gallon cart, no bin. There would be no bins. And again, with the bin, there always is that tendency of material blowing around. And again, like I mentioned earlier, we could implement the curbside recycle education. Yard waste would still be a sticker, or residents could get a subscription yard waste program. One of the things that the EAC has requested is an organics or compost program. We'd be willing to offer that. That's in our proposal, a subscription service. It would piggyback with yard waste service from April through November, and a cart would be used for that service. There'd be a subscription rate for that. One of the programs that we are very excited about offering you, and has been probably one of the hottest services that we have, it's exclusive to Waste Management. It is called our At Your Door Special Collection. This is a convenient way to get rid of all the household hazardous waste and electronics that you have in your house. So if you think about all the material you have sitting in your garage, your basement, your closets, anywhere, you know, your cleaners, your paints, your chemicals, your light bulbs, your batteries, sharps, and electronics. This is a low cost, easy way to get rid of this material. The cost is $1.40 a home per month. All residents participate. That's why we're able to keep the cost so low. So if you annualize it, it's $16.80 a year. And if you take a TV right now to a drop-off facility, it generally costs about $35 just for 1 TV. So again, this is an unlimited service. We service over 300,000 homes with this service in the Chicagoland area. Another thing that we'd like to offer is Waste Watch, and this is a community watch service where our drivers would work with local law enforcement to identify anything that looks unusual. Again, a very popular program that's been successful. We'd also offer a service brochure at the beginning of the contract that would detail all the services that we are offering to residents. Waste management safety and service records speak for themselves. Our drivers know the Warrenville neighborhoods and are proud to provide the quality of service that Warrenville residents have come to expect. The infrastructure is in place, and I just say, why look elsewhere? And we just feel that this is a very good proposal for the city. You are at a point that would make a good transition, because you're currently at 35% with residents that have cart service already. And again, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Okay, I'm going to begin by reading the citizens' comment that we have on this item. The email is entitled Waste Hauling Contract Discussion, and it's from our resident Laura Hewell. She says, I would love to see the city of Warrenville do as some other towns in the area do, Wheaton, Glen Ellen, Geneva, that I know of, and offer curbside food scrap composting. I attended a program last year, May 23rd, 2019, on waste reduction, offered by the Fox Valley Sustainability Network. Jen Nelson of 7 Generations Ahead, SGA, spoke on food scrap composting. SGA has produced a municipal guide on residential food scrap composting that covers options, planning, and public engagement, potential challenges and solutions, and compost procurement. Appendices are benefits to composting, hauler contracts, and best practices with Illinois case studies. Perhaps you have a copy or could get one. My daughter lives in Minneapolis, and their composting service includes a bin, weekly pickup the same day as other waste, and the cost is covered by a charge on everyone's bill whether they participate or not. She can compost food scraps, including bones and fat, and paper like napkins and paper towels in the special bags which they purchase. I have read that only 1% of food scrap waste is composted. Each person in Illinois throws away an average of 20 pounds of food per month. 20% of waste going to landfill is food scraps. Decomposing food scraps produce methane, an extreme contributor to climate warming. Garbage disposals at home are problematic with solid waste at the water treatment plants, often having to be strained away and landfilled. The treated water may not always be of the quality we think it should be in our rivers. Food scrap composting would be a huge service to Warrenville residents and would be a significant step in sustainability for the city. Thank you for your attention and your efforts on behalf of residents. Laura Hewell. All right, let's go through everyone for comments, beginning with the mayor.
Thank you. I'm in support of the staff recommendation to direct staff to bid out the refuse service as outlined in option 1 provided by Assistant City Administrator White. That having been said, that doesn't show any dissatisfaction with Waste Management. They've been a great vendor for all these years. But at this point, it does make sense to look around a little bit because we haven't done that for a number of years, and it certainly seems prudent to do it regularly. So that's what I would support.
Thank you. Alderman Ashour.
I agree with the mayor. I think you guys have done a good job. I like the program you're offering, but we've got to keep everybody square.
Alderman Berry.
Yes, I guess I agree with option number 1. I would like to see a cart program done. It is just a neat and cleaner way to pick up refuse at each individual home. I live in Emerald Green. We do not participate in the city's refuse collection program, unfortunately. And every week it's just a mess. So I would like to see the city actually look into, take a closer look at the carts. But I guess I'll agree with option number 1. I would like to see if we can get some other bids in, and we'll go from there. All right, thank you.
Alderman Davalos.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not even really ready to say what I feel about the options. I'm still asking questions of Waste Management. So let me do that first. On this proposal, I just had a couple questions. You said 1 free bulk item a week. What exactly is a bulk item? Because I know you have a white goods pickup, that's a different fee and different things. So what would be an example of something like that?
That was a great question. Bulk item would be like a chair, a table, a mattress, something like that.
And would you just put it out? Would you have to call somebody or anything like that?
Nope. The only caveat we have, Alderman, is that as long as it can be managed by 1 person. That's the only thing.
Okay. So in this proposal, whether you got the 35-gallon or the 96, do you have a separate recycle container or is there no more recycling?
No, you'd have a separate recycle. So you'd have 1 for garbage, 1 for recycle.
Okay. And let's see. So this program you talked about with hazardous waste and electronics and batteries and all that kind of stuff, I'm interested because the city does recycle batteries, but it's a problem. We have so many people violating what we're trying to do, and we've had to stop it and start it. And so you're saying it's $16.80 a year?
Correct.
Wow. That is amazing, I think.
All residents, again, one thing I would stress again is all residents have to participate. That's how we're able to keep the rate so low.
Okay.
But it's unlimited service.
Yeah, and so you would explain all that in this service brochure you were talking about,
Exactly.
all that stuff. Okay, my last question, where does the yard waste go now? In a third container, or if you had weeds and stuff, not the big, where would that fit into this program?
Yard waste is the third component of the traditional service that we offer, refuse, recycled yard waste. So our proposal is either sticker-based yard waste, and that's in bags or containers.
Uh-huh.
I think it's pretty much just like what you have now, or you can do a subscription service. And that with a subscription service, you get a cart.
And that's $180 a year, $15 a month or whatever.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
And then I just want to point out to the email that came in from the resident on page 11 at the bottom is our proposal for subscription organics collection. So that was part of our proposal.
And we could include that, and everybody wouldn't have to participate in that. You just pay for if you were interested.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Just to follow up on that just a little bit, the subscription organics collection would be combined with the yard waste subscription service and would include food waste, no paper goods, no meter bones, and stickers, because I believe you said that the yard waste collection requires stickers anyway.
No, there's two programs for yard waste, either sticker based or subscription. Now with the organics program, you also get a 96-gallon cart. You can combine the organics with the yard waste because they go to the same compost facility. Okay, so with the organics, anything in addition to the cart would require a sticker. So the cart, if you get the subscription service, you get the cart. Anything that goes in the cart, no sticker. Anything outside the cart, say you had 2 extra bags of yard waste, that would require a sticker.
So that would be, in response to the resident, a pretty big incentive for people to do the food scrap composting because they could also use it for bags of yard waste in the same container.
Correct.
And they wouldn't have to buy stickers for those.
Right. Then the only thing you gotta keep in mind is yard waste and the organics would go from April through November. That's what's called the yard waste season. That's the compost season.
I understand. My question has to do with the recycling education program. You said you would only roll out the recycling education program if there's a cart service. If there's so much contamination, then why haven't we already done recycling education programs?
It's a great question. Christina and I have talked about this, and we've tried some things as far as information on your website and that type of thing. In fact, in one community we tried to focus on that was really contaminated a couple of years ago, and just do a real focused education. But when you have a recycle bin, our education is at the curbside, so we use cart hangers. And with a bin, there's no place to put a cart hanger. And I'll be honest with you, Warrenville is probably, as far as with my contracts, Warrenville is probably the last contract that I have that has a recycle bin. All the rest have moved toward recycle carts. And then once you get a cart, our drivers can identify contaminated carts at the curb, put on the cart hanger on the cart, identify what's the major contaminant, and then we leave it there for the residents to clean up, and then we'd service it on the next scheduled day. And like I said earlier, it's been very successful. We piloted this in Elgin, this program, and we reduced their contamination from over 42% down to 16% over 2 years. So it's a significant drop. Now, 16% still seems high, and you're right. The market's now 0.5% or less contamination. It's basically unattainable. But we still have to work trying to educate residents on recycling right. It takes time. We didn't get to where we are overnight, and we just have to keep providing a consistent message.
Okay, well, I would like to see more information about this easily accessible on the city website. I was having an argument with my dad the other day about whether a particular item was recyclable or not, and he spent an hour going through information on your website to try and find the answer to that question. I still do not agree with him. So I think that the information needs to be a little clearer, and I think it needs to be certainly more accessible on our city website so that people can find what they're talking about. It had to do with coated paperboard, what the definition of coated paperboard was, whether a particular container that said, you know, recyclable paper on it, but then your list of recyclables says only uncoated paperboard, uncoated printing and office paper. And when you look down on this proposal on page 9, you even say paper recyclable materials that are less than 4 inches in size in any dimension are listed as not recyclable. I think most people would find that surprising, that very small pieces of paper are not recyclable. Do they get caught in your machines? Is that the issue?
Yeah, there's a, 4 inches in diameter is like shredded paper. Is shredded paper recyclable? Yes, but imagine we're picking up the material, it goes into the truck, it goes to the processing center, it's going on conveyor belts. And when you have that type of small material, it just falls through the processing equipment and ends up on the floor. So that's why we focus on, and basically all haulers and processors, their systems are all the same, and the bigger pieces of paper will make it through the processing center. The smaller ones won't.
Okay, are there any other quick tips you can give us all about what the most common kinds of contamination are?
Absolutely. The biggest contaminant is plastic bags. Now, don't jump to conclusion. Plastic bags are recyclable. We ask you to take them to a grocery store or box store. But in the curbside program, they wreak havoc with our machines, whether it be us or any other hauler and processor. As you can imagine, the processing centers are very mechanized now, and it wraps around the equipment. We have 3 shifts at our plants, and on every shift, we have to have guys go in with large knives and cut off all the plastic bags that get stuck on the equipment. So that would be the first thing. If we could get rid of plastic bags from the recycling mix, that'd be a huge win, huge win. Our recycle right message is very simple. Bottles, cans, paper, cardboard, no food or liquid, no plastic bags. Just very simple. People are overthinking it. They have the attitude of wishful recycling. Well, it may be recyclable, they'll throw it in. We got to change that mindset to just focus on the simple things that were like 10, 15, 20 years ago.
I understand, and I hear what you're saying about the plastic bags. In my experience, the Warrenville grocery stores no longer accept plastic bags for recycling. They won't take them. If they do take them, they throw them away. And since we've moved to a system now where people can't take their reusable bags into the grocery stores because of the pandemic, I know a lot of people whose plastic bags are piling up at the moment, so that's not ideal. My last question has to do with the proposal that you put in. I guess it's option 3. It would be to leave the price of the stickers at the same rate and add a base rate of $16.80. Your estimate before was that the average household in Warrenville basically buys half a sticker a month. So since $16.80 is more like 3 or 4 stickers in price, wouldn't this be approximately a 10-fold increase in people's cost per month?
No, it's actually, if you look at it, it's 0.44 stickers per, let me get to it here. It's on page.
You said 0.44 stickers per home per month. So if each home is now paying $16.80, which is about 3 to 4 stickers. So instead of 0.4, you're at 4. That's a factor of 10 more. Even if it was a factor of 8, let's say, that's still a very big increase.
Well, if I said 0.44 stickers per home per month, it's actually on page 5. I correct myself because it's actually 0.41 stickers per home per week.
Okay, so then it's only about double then, not 8.
And see what happens is, as I mentioned, we've basically cut in half the sticker sales in the last 5 years. And when we do our pro formas to evaluate a contract, the sticker rate, has to cover certain costs of the refuse truck going, the recycle truck going. And as sticker sales go down, so does, of course, our revenue. And then we find that we're not covering our costs for, having our trucks going up and down the streets. So, and as sticker prices go up, it becomes a vicious cycle because then residents buy less stickers. And the potential for putting garbage in the recycled bin becomes more and more of a possibility because people don't want to pay for the higher sticker. That's just some things that we see.
Can I ask whether, in your experience, moving to cart-based rather than volume-based and having such big trash receptacles increases the average amount of waste? Because it just seems intuitive that it probably would.
I don't think it increases the amount of waste. It definitely containerizes all the waste. I think what we see is when you move to a cart service, generally your recycling becomes cleaner because people don't necessarily, if they are hide the refuse in the recycling. Plus, then we can implement that recycle curbside program, and that's a huge benefit. So I don't see the refuse increasing, albeit let me say that with COVID, our volumes in municipalities have gone up, upwards about 20%. That's a huge, huge increase.
Yeah, makes sense if more people are in the homes and there's not as much trash accumulating in schools and office buildings and other places, perhaps.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. We'll move on to Alderman Krischel.
Thanks. One question. So are the trucks that pick up the stickered refuse the same ones that pick up the trash that's in a cart?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess I have a hard time understanding if you're selling less stickers, but more people are using carts. It's the same amount of trash. It's just paid for differently, right? And picked up the same. It's in the same trucks.
Yeah, but you have to look at that when we did our pro forma, Alderman, we based it on a certain amount of stickers being sold. We made that assumption based on history that we had, and it has basically been cut in half, going from 120,000 down to 60,000. Now we have gained some revenue. You are correct on the cart side, but not enough to make up that delta in the sticker loss.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm still confused as to where the rest of the garbage is going then, because if we're getting rid of it with a sticker or we're getting rid of it with I recently went to a cart service only because I was tired of going to pick up stickers the night before trash day, but and it was just easier. I was okay with paying a little bit more. But there are times when I could go 2 weeks without, putting the trash out with a sticker. And so I think that may contribute to, as Alderman Goodman is saying, people are a little more conscious about what they're throwing away and what they're disposing of. And so I think it's not that they weren't using the service. I think they were just being more conscientious of how much trash they're putting out, and maybe, if they could stretch it an extra week, they would. So, but thank you for answering the questions. I think, as Alderman Ashauer mentioned, I think, I've been happy with the waste management service. I think, but it may be time that, just we have to do our due diligence to see what else is out there. So thank you.
Thank you. And last, we'll go to Alderman Wilson.
Okay, first of all, I live in Warrenville Lake, so we're not party to your garbage collection and your trash collection. So I feel a little guilty about even suggesting any kind of a comment since I'm not subject to it. So, but it's been very interesting conversation, and I just really do want to recluse myself from voting on this or taking any kind of a position since I do not have, a stake in this game here, with all due respect. And if that's okay with everybody, just thank you for the presentation. I can take a lot of this back to the homeowners association here and see if we can change our circumstances if need be. So thank you very much for the presentation, but that's all my comment. Thank you.
That's fine, Alderman Wilson. If you want to abstain on any vote or conversation, that's fine. I don't think there's any conflict of interest. I know Alderman Barry already said that she lives in an area of town that has the homeowners association pick up its trash. That's also true for me. There's quite a few neighborhoods in town where the association covers the trash pickup.
Alderman Goodwin, can I make a comment real quickly?
Sure, but
it's Alderman Devlos. Or can you go through?
Alderman Devlos, go right ahead.
Well, it's just I've run into this thing with Alderman Berry and Alderman Wilson, different situation. I guess what I'm saying is I know they don't have trash pickup, but probably people in their wards do, and probably need some sort of representation on this issue, one way or the other. So I'm just sort of bringing that up because I've had to face this before on other issues and had to make a decision. So I'm just sharing that experience.
That's right. And I feel comfortable talking about this issue and voting on this issue. And I certainly represent my parents who live in a part of town with this service. If I don't represent everyone else in my ward and hopefully everyone else in the community. So since I see that as my job, I'm comfortable making that decision. I have a request from Finance Director Dahlstrom to put in a question.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I just had a quick question for Vaughn. If the city were to go to a cart-only service program, would that continue to be billed directly by Waste Management, or would there be anticipated city participation in the billing and collections?
No, we would continue to bill residents direct, just like we do now, that for those residents that have the cart service.
Thank you very much, Vaughn.
Yep.
But sales of stickers would continue through the city?
I'm sorry, you broke up there. What was the question?
But sales of stickers would continue through the city for yard waste pickup?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right.
This is Alderman Bevere. I think I got skipped.
Alderman Bevere, please go ahead.
Yeah, I've been happy with their service, and I agree with the mayor. And I use the yard sticker stuff all the time. It works good for me. And I bring our bags to the Jewel in Donata, and they recycle. So I know Family Foods doesn't, but a lot of other grocery stores in the area do. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. That's helpful. All right. We won't go back through the whole list, but if anyone else has any further comments, please identify yourself and speak up.
Mayor Brummel here. Target in Warrenville also takes the plastic bag recycling.
Great. Okay. Well, if anyone would like to make a motion, we can consider that now.
Oh, where's our? I can't find the page.
Assistant City Administrator White, you had something.
Yes, while we wait for a motion, I just wanted to also mention that, and Vaughn touched on this, the Environmental Advisory Commission, also known as the EAC for the city, has been for some time asking for the food scrap collection or composting program to be part of the city's contract. So when we get the direction from council on which option to go forward with on the contract, I would also like some direction on whether if we are going out to bid, whether food scrap composting should be included in the bid requirements.
At least so that we have the price to consider, or as part of a required piece?
So that we have a program to consider, and whether it is at an additional cost to the residents or it's folded into a monthly rate, or however it works per the hauler.
Okay, I'm sure different haulers do that in different ways. Thank you.
Alderman Davalos, I can make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to recommend the City Council direct staff to bid out refuse service as outlined in option 1 of Assistant City Administrator White's memo dated September 23rd, 2020.
Second, Alderman Ashour.
Assistant City Administrator White asked for the motion to include direction about the composting portion. So if the motioner would like to amend the motion to include some direction on that, please feel free.
I guess I could add that with whichever option is chosen, that we have them ask either Waste Management, which we know a little about, and other potential waste management companies to give us bids on composting food or curbside food composting.
All right, does the seconder agree?
Seconder agrees.
The seconder agrees. All right, so we have an amendment on the motion, an amended motion, I suppose.
Could I ask one question? As I guess we're waiting for, if we had a second?
We do, but if there's further discussion, this is a good time.
I need a little clarification on the motions. They're pretty simple here. And I would also like added to this some of the things, some of the options that Waste Management proposed tonight are extraordinarily interesting to me and I think other people. You know, this electronics and hazardous waste, the idea of food composting, the idea, anyway. So I just hope that will happen. I hope that we will be questioning and comparing apples to apples. If somebody could just comment on that, because I think it could add the cost to any other waste hauler, but it might be important to citizens.
We will go to Assistant City Administrator White.
Thank you. I think potentially just adding to the motion to include in the RFP any recycling options that the hauler can offer should be included and encouraged in the bid response so that we can evaluate that program as well.
Okay, thank you. I think that's good, and that helps me a lot to know how to vote. I don't mind looking at other options because the time has gone by, but to me, it will always be compared back to what I heard tonight, which I was very impressed with. Thank you.
All right, so the motioner agrees to that amendment. Does the seconder agree to that amendment?
Yes.
All right, we have a motion by Alderman Davalos, seconded by Alderman Ashour. I think everything has been clarified and we're ready to vote on the motion. I'll pause for one more moment in case there's any further comments, if anyone wants to ask any more or say any more.
Mayor Brummel, just one final comment, a general comment. Again, to thank Vaughn for the service that his company has provided in the past. I share the sentiments expressed by Alderman Davalos. Some of the things, the innovative things that you presented tonight, I found intriguing, and I hope they will somehow become a part of our future in town. I just wanted to recognize that the industry that you're in is a difficult one. It's more difficult every year to make a profit and stay in business. I wanted to recognize that. Requirements have changed, people have changed. over time. The needs that people have changed and become more complex and more sophisticated, and the industry is a difficult one to be competitive in, and for people to expect the prices that they paid several years ago to get rid of whatever they wanted, that's not going to happen anymore. It's far more difficult to get rid of the waste that we have to deal with, and far more expensive to take that recycling and make a profit with that. So that having been said, thank you, Vaughn. It was a great presentation tonight, and I look forward to seeing what we can come up with in the future.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kirschner. All right, we will call the roll. Alderman Ashour.
Aye.
Alderman Berry.
Aye.
Alderman Bevere.
Aye.
Alderman Zavalos.
Aye.
Alderman Goodman says aye. Alderman Kerschel.
Aye.
And Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Mr. Kirschner. And thank you to staff for providing us with a lot of good choices and a good discussion, including the feedback from the EAC and the resident. Moving on to item number 3 on the agenda, the consideration of consultant services agreement for the Mack Road Path and Bridge Replacement Project Phase 2, and this is to some degree combined with item number 4. We will go to Senior and Civil Engineer Hawking.
Thank you. As Alderman Goodman has described, the engineering, the memo in the backup materials is for agenda item this on F3 as well as F4. I'll go over some history on the project status, as well as summarize the contracts required for the project. So I'll go into a little history first. The Mack Road Path Connection Project was first identified in the Bikeway Implementation Plan that was adopted back in 2010. There was a need for residents from the west side of Route 59 to connect to the Forest Preserve property, specifically the McKee Marsh, the trail that's within the Forest Preserve. And this portion of Mack Road east of 59 is high speed limit, has narrow to minimal shoulders, so it was identified that there would need to be some type of bike path or on-street bike path along the sides of the roads. In 2015, staff was directed to look for grant projects, grant funding for this project, and was awarded, the city was awarded STP funding for 75% of the construction and construction engineering for the path project. The city then entered into an agreement with the Forest Preserve District for a cost sharing agreement. Some of the path obviously would have to be constructed on Forest Preserve property. So it was a good idea to have them as a partner in this project. So the local cost sharing for the path between the city and the Forest Preserve currently is 70-30 split. The proposed improvements included 10-foot asphalt path, as well as pedestrian signal modifications at 59 Mack Road, and obviously a connection into the Forest Preserve District property. It would benefit the residents by making it easier to cross 59 with those pedestrian improvements at the intersection, as well as obviously creating a path to the regional trails. The city then hired a consultant to around 2016, 2017 to do an alternatives analysis. So the consultant took a look at 3 different alternatives: a path on the north side, a path on the south side, and then finally on-street bike lanes. Through the analysis that they provided to city staff, and as well, it was presented to the Forest Preserve District, Winfield Township, and finally City Council. It was determined that the best alternative was the north side to place this path was a separate path on the north side of Mack Road. Reasons for this included The south side of Mac Road, the Forest Preserve property, is a very sensitive Class 4 forest preserve. The Forest Preserve was not really keen on having a new path go through a sensitive forest preserve like that. If the path was on the south side, it would require a mid-block crossing east of the bridge, similar to the one that's farther along Mac Road. And again, Forest Preserve and Winfield Township both did not think that that was a safe crossing place to put something like that. So again, north side was a little bit, was more feasible in terms of that. Finally, costs. If the path was on the south side, the Forest Preserve dog park and boat launch would require a full reconstruction of that area, as well as there's a lot more floodplain actually on the south side of Mac Road. So we would have to get even more compensatory storage if we were to put the path on that south side. So like I said, we presented this to City Council and City Council approved the north side as the preferred alternative at the 2017 meeting. Thus, we began preliminary engineering with ERA, the consultants that was chosen. Staff did hold a public information meeting at that time. It was in October 2017. We had a number of residents that live on Mac Road and then other residents from the city attend that meeting. The residents that live on Mac Road were concerned with obviously a path on their side of the street, cars, their cars pulling out, with pedestrians or bikers in that area, concerned with, the grading, etc. And at that time, we didn't know what, if any, acquisition would be needed for the bike path. So as the process moved forward, the bridge had to be analyzed because as part of the project, we were going to widen the bridge for the path. The bridge was found to be in a deteriorating condition and actually found out that we needed to replace it. So that scope was added to the project. So now, in addition to it being a path project, it is now a full bridge reconstruction project. The bridge reconstruction project is actually the most important part of this project now because of the deteriorating conditions. The loading on the bridge has been reduced, so it is very important to get that done sooner than later. In addition to that, the consultant was able to verify property boundaries, and it was found that in order to put a path not immediately adjacent to the street, that there would have to be some property acquisition in final engineering. So at this point, the preliminary engineering is about 90% complete. We've developed, consultant has developed a project development report, which is typically done at the end of the preliminary engineering phase and submitted it to IDOT, Winfield Township, as well as the Forest Preserve District for review. We've gotten some initial feedback from IDOT. We're waiting for the remainder in order to resubmit to IDOT, but we anticipate that this project development report, which signifies the end of preliminary engineering, will be approved by the end of this year. In addition, we plan to hold another public information meeting on October 14th in a few weeks for the public as well. Today we sent individual resident letters to the affected property owners on Mac Road so that we hope that they attend to give everyone an update, because since the last public meeting, we've added a bridge. We know that we are going to have to do property acquisition. So there's been a couple things that have changed since that point, but we just wanted to make sure that everyone knows the status of it. It is also a requirement of the preliminary engineering phase in this project development report. So at this time, because we know that the project development report will most likely be approved by the end of this month, we knew that the next phase was going to be final engineering. For final engineering contract to be approved, it goes through IDOT, and last time it took almost 6 months for IDOT to approve the contract. So we want to get this started as soon as possible, again, because the bridge is a focal point of the project. We need to keep this moving forward. So about a few weeks ago, we went for a request for qualifications. We received 3 qualification packages, and Engineering Resource Associates was selected as the most qualified consultant. They are the ones who perform the phase 1 engineering services for the city, and they've done a great job on that project as well as other projects that they've worked on in the city. So what's in the packet for this specific agenda item is the phase 2 final engineering contract with Engineering Resource Associates. The final engineering includes final plan and specifications for bidding. It includes property acquisition services, as well as finalizing the requirements for the environmental aspects of the project, floodplain, compensatory storage requirements, any wetland, et cetera, that's on the project. In the agreement, it has a total cost of $341,256.93. That is for the complete project. That is the bridge and the path all together. And it includes, that is the total for the project. The city's actual cost part of that is around $132,000. And that's because it's not a complete 80-20 split. The STP bridge funding allows for a cost sharing in the engineering phase of 80-20. However, the path portion is not included in that. So the path portion is all local funding, and that's of the 132, the path portion is $80,000. So that's why it's not a perfect 80-20 split if you do the math, but we are getting 80%, or the federal is paying for 80% of the bridge funding. So I can talk about the next agenda item after this one, but they are related to each other. The other agenda item is the actual agreement with IDOT. Same project, same total amounts. It specifies the cost sharing between IDOT and the city and the funds that the federal grant is covering. I think with that, I know there were a couple of residents that have been spoken out lately with City Council. They've mentioned concerns with the utilities. There are utilities actually on both sides of Mack Road. On north side, there are overhead ComEd lines and underground Comcast and AT&T. On the south side, there is a high pressure gas main. So on either side of the road, we're going to have to deal with utilities. The utilities are in the right of way on the north side, so ComEd would have to relocate those poles as part of the project. Preliminary engineering identified the utilities, have already sent the plans to the utilities, so the utilities are aware that there is a project upcoming. The actual design for those utilities and everything else that needs to get adjusted on that north side occurred during this final engineering phase. I think with that, I can take any questions at this time.
Thank you. We'll again start with the mayor.
Thank you, and thank you, Christine. Very comprehensive presentation this evening. I'm in support of both projects, the bridge and the path, and also in support of the agreements that are being presented for consideration in number 3 and number 4 on the agenda. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Ashour.
Just a question about the property acquisition. Is that a guaranteed thing, or are they going to force the sale or purchase? Does it change the engineering agreements? If that, I guess what happens if everybody gets together and doesn't want to sell?
Yes, so we would go through the property acquisition services during the final engineering, and obviously a dollar amount would be placed for the areas of right of way that we would be looking to purchase if property owners do not want to negotiate, or we get to a certain point with that. City council will have to then make the decision to essentially condemn, the properties and I believe take, essentially the property that we would need. So this, this is a pretty important step right now with final engineering, because that's where this all occurs. We have to have that right away in hand before we construct the project.
Thank you. It just makes it more difficult when I know we have a sensitive forest across the street, but we also have some sensitive residents.
Correct. And the path project obviously has the most right away that's required. However, the bridge has property that's required as well. So we're going to have to do this, whether it's a path or a bridge. We're going to have to go through this property acquisition for the bridge, in the least. But if we do it all together, it's all one process.
Thank you.
Alderman Berry.
Thank you. I know that when we did the paving on Warrenville Road, we had to deal with Commonwealth Edison and the cost to move the poles and not even do underground utilities was extremely expensive. We really need to find out how much that's going to cost, because we're only getting a portion of the amounts here that we're going to have to pay for. And I guess we're going to have to find out what the residents want for their property also. Are they going to want some amount of money? Because we had an issue with that with the bridge on Williams Road. So these are just not simple numbers here. It's going to be much more complicated in the future with dollars. That's my only concern. I am in favor of the bridge and the path. I would prefer to see it on the Forest Preserve side, but obviously that really is not going to happen. So thank you.
Thanks. Alderman Bevere.
Yes, I was going to mention the same thing, that maybe undergrounding all the phone poles would be close to buying all the property, and it'd be less headaches. But we're going to see what the people feel. I've heard that they're not for it. And as far as the south side goes, I don't know if this path's going to be blacktop or limestone screenings, but you would think that they could put a limestone screen path over a high pressure main. But I don't know how far the right of way goes on the south side, and if we really need that much forest reserve property. So that's my comments. And I'm for the project, but I'm really concerned about the residents. So, we need to really look at both sides and figure out how we can do this and get prices of all the different ways. Thank you.
Alderman Davalos.
Thank you. Yes, very good presentation and summary of what's going on. I don't really have any questions. They've all been mentioned by the other aldermen. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple of things. First is just an observation, which is that while there was one resident that came and talked about not wanting the path, I've probably spoken to about 8 people in Fox Hollow who like the idea of the path very much and would almost certainly use it to get back and forth to McKee Marsh. I know a marathon runner who lives in Fox Hollow, and I run into him jogging at McKee Marsh all the time. So I imagine he would go back and forth quite a lot. So even though the people who are against something are often louder, it's sometimes the case that there are a lot more people in favor. So we just need to keep that in mind, even if they don't come and complain. Secondly, I noticed in the Exhibit D scope of services to the contract, some discussion about the sufficiency rating of the bridge. And I wondered, Senior Engineer Hawking, if you could talk about the bridge safety as it currently stands and what we face as options, I imagine bad options going forward if we aren't able to replace this bridge before it becomes unusable.
Correct. I believe Public Works, Deputy Public Works Director Phil Kukler had mentioned this at a previous City Council meeting, but the load rating on the bridge was reduced. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what it's been reduced to, but if the bridge continues to be deteriorated without being replaced, we would have to close the bridge. So that would be detrimental to the number of, obviously, people that drive that road every day, to the residents, services, etc. But that is a concern. We have spoken with our consultants. We have a anticipated bid letting when the bids are opened of November 2022, and they believe that the bridge, as its current condition, will remain and be safe until we can get the bridge reconstructed in 2022-23 in the least. So they don't see, or they don't anticipate having to close the bridge, but that is a major concern, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all completely agree that safety is the primary concern when we're talking about rebuilding bridges here in Warrenville. Even though this all came up because of a path project, and that was sort of the context in which we're all discussing this. One thing we all really want is for this bridge to be safe, and that does mean also raising and lengthening the bridge. So there's going to be some intrusion on the neighbors in that respect either way, right?
Correct, yes. They have to raise the bridge to meet the minimum requirements for floods that go through that bridge. Currently, in what they call a 30-year event, which is what they design bridges for, the roadway is overtopped, and there's significant ponding behind the bridge, which results in water surface elevations upstream of the bridge. So when a bridge is reconstructed, it's designed for a 30-year type of storm flood event, and so that's why the bridge has to be raised, and thus obviously the road adjacent to it has to be raised. On the west side of the bridge, directly west of the bridge, is on the north side is DuPage County property. Obviously the south side is the Forest Preserve, who is a stakeholder in this project. We do have one resident on the east side of the bridge. On the north side, where we're going to obviously get right away, and then with the raising of the profile of the road, could create some engineering, obviously solvable issues with the driveway, but that's all part of the right of way we would need to make the streamline back to their existing driveway as smooth as possible.
Okay, so there's going to be regrading for the road anyway, and there's going to be impacts on at least one resident right next to the bridge anyway. One thing that I was reading in page 2 of the scope of services had to do with the detours. How long do you think the road will be closed for the bridge reconstruction?
So we're anticipating that if we can go out to bid in November, by the time everything starts ramping up, it'll be hopefully early in the next year, 2023. It could take, I believe, 9 months for the bridge potentially to be closed, probably similar to how Williams Road Bridge was closed. And the detour route for this project is going Obviously 59, then to Batavia, Williams, all the way around. So you would see a little bit more traffic, obviously, on those roads during that time. When we actually recently had a meeting with IDOT over this detour route. They didn't see any major concerns with the proposed detour route and the traffic that would be anticipated to be going on these roads. But, it would be obviously as short as possible. As soon as we would be able to start construction, we would during that year.
Understood. All right. Overall, I support the bridge and path project and agree with the mayor. Moving on to Alderman Krischel is next.
Thank you. Do you have an estimate of kind of, I'm a little concerned about the property acquisition as well. So do you have an estimate of, how much property or what the, kind of dimensions are, even preliminarily, that would be required?
It depends on the location of the property, right away and everything. But for the most part, obviously the path is 10 feet wide, and we need to be about 5 feet away from the edge of pavement, which we will actually be placing curbs. So between the curb and the edge of the path is 5 feet. And after that, there's a 10-foot path. You obviously want maybe a foot or two after that point. So depending on the location of the property, we do have estimates for the areas. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's at least 10 feet. In some places could be a little bit more. We actually don't have a lot of right-of-way on either side of the road. The right-of-way is pretty much right now where the power poles are. So it could be on average about 10 feet, sometimes less, sometimes more, I would say. Okay. In addition to that, temporarily, we would need temporary easements for construction too. So that would be, included in that whole process.
Okay, thank you. That helps clarify. And the fact that the property acquisition will be required for the bridge anyway. I mean, we have to fix the bridge, right? I mean, even if it's for continuing emergency personnel over that bridge. I know that today we're not taking heavy loads over that bridge for obvious reasons. So okay, yeah, I mean, if we're gonna have to do that for the bridge repairs anyway, then yeah, I support that. So thank you.
Thank you. And moving on to Alderman Wilson.
And my only question is about the total cost of this project. We see the figures that we have right now in the budget, but it's just how much all this extra money is going to cost us and what's the total amount that we're going to be able to handle so far as the moving of the electrical lines, the post, and the acquisition of that property. So that's my only concern, but I'm delighted to see this moving along. Hope it works as well and on time. So I'm very much in favor of doing what we have to do to get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Administrator Coakley.
Thank you. I just wanted to add in one comment along the discussion lines. Remembering we're partnering with a number of organizations, and certainly for the bridge, I foresee no problems interacting and negotiating whatever access we need there because of access for traffic and safety, emergency vehicles for the bridge. When it comes to the path, should the Forest Reserve be a hard no on it's not going on the south side, the city cannot legally force another governmental body to cooperate. We do not have condemnation authority over the Forest Reserve or even the county or another city, et cetera, that would be there. So it would take a cooperative negotiation. When we're discussing the facts of certainly the citizen interests are important, the safety factors, all those factors that the Forest Observers brought up environmentally, but if they say no, it's not going on the south side, then that leaves as a legal option only the north side for the city to pursue. I thought that was important to add to the discussion. We'll get more details. The engineers certainly know that as they're designing it. We'll get legal input later, but that's something to keep in mind at this point. Thank you.
Yeah, the city administrator brings up an excellent point, and I think staff was pretty clear that the Forest Preserve has said that they are not interested in allowing us to put the path on the south side of the road.
Can I also add to the budget concerns? We preliminarily, Phil Kukler and Administrator Coakley and Finance Director Dawson have identified potentially the use of the Rebuild Illinois funds that the city is currently obtaining, and we have estimated that we could use that towards the city funded portion of final engineering, acquisition, and construction engineering. We've identified that this project is exactly what the Rebuild Illinois funds are for, a bridge construction project, and because the path is part of it, it is also included in there. So we are estimating that we could use those Rebuild Illinois funds for this project.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great clarification as well. All right, if anyone else has further comments or questions, feel free to identify yourself and speak up now.
Mayor Brummel again. Thank you. Just a couple of observations about concerns I heard from homeowners up there. One of which was their property values being negatively impacted by this path. I would just suggest that almost certainly, at least from my perspective, when they go to sell, that this path would be considered an amenity on their side of the street, in that it gives them a direct access to the Forest Preserve without having to cross the pavement. This would certainly be a positive for young families. So I would offer that as an observation. In addition, one of the other concerns I heard at the meeting last time was people had invested some significant money in landscaping in front of their property, and they were concerned that that would be destroyed or in some way negatively impacted. I would just suggest that our track record as a city for doing these kinds of projects and doing them with minimal negative impact to citizens, as well as enhancements that we try to provide, that if the city of Warrenville is involved, we'll do our very best to make sure that the final product is something that everybody's happy with and that would not negatively impact the homeowner. So I just wanted to offer those observations.
Thank you. All right, if there's anyone else, please speak up, or if anyone is interested in making a motion.
I can make a motion, Alderman Davalos, if there are no questions. I would like to move to recommend the City Council pass a resolution approving the engineering agreement with Engineering Resource Associates, Inc. for the final engineering Phase 2 design of the Mack Road Path and Bridge Replacement Project in the amount of $341,256.93.
Second, Alderman Berry.
We have a motion by Alderman Davalos, a second by Alderman Berry. If there are no further questions or comments, I will call the roll. Alderman Ashour.
Aye.
Alderman Berry.
Aye.
Alderman Bavir.
Aye.
Alderman Davalos.
Aye.
Alderman Krischel.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
And Alderman Goodman votes yes. So the motion carries. Item number 4 is very similar. It's the consideration of the local agency agreement with IDOT for the Mack Road Path and Bridge Replacement Project Phase 2. And again, we go to the senior civil engineer, Hocking.
Thank you. As I described in the previous agenda item, this agreement is actually with IDOT. It identifies the cost sharing of the final engineering agreement between the federal share and the local cost share. So the total in this document is the same as the previous one. It just identifies the cost sharing between the two entities. And this contract is signed between the city and IDOT.
Right, and the local agencies mentioned here include all local agencies that are not IDOT, correct?
Correct, that is the city and the Forest Preserve District.
That's right. All right, any questions? We'll go again through the roll. Alderman Ashour,
No questions.
Alderman Berry,
No questions.
Alderman Bevere,
No questions.
Alderman Davalos.
No questions.
I have no questions. Alderman Krischel
No questions.
and Alderman Wilson.
No questions.
Does the mayor wish to add anything?
No, I said my piece before. Thank you.
All right. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Alderman Davalos. I would like to move to recommend the City Council pass a resolution approving the local agency agreement for federal participation for the final engineering Phase 2 design of the Mack Road Path and Bridge Replacement Project in the amount of $341,256.93 that will be cost shared with a $209,005.55 of STP Bridge funds and $132,251.38 for the local share.
Second, Alderman Ashour.
We have a motion by Alderman Davalos, a second by Alderman Ashour. If there's no further discussion, I will call the roll. Alderman Ashour,
Aye.
Alderman Berry,
Aye.
Alderman Bevere,
Aye.
Alderman Davalos,
Aye.
Alderman Goodman votes aye. Alderman Krischel,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you very much, Kristen.
Thank you.
Okay. That is all on that item. We are moving on to item number 5, a discussion of the alternative electrical aggregation agreement. We have a citizen's comment that has been sent in, but first, before I read that, I will go to Assistant City Administrator White to present the item.
Thank you. In June, we discussed at length the electric aggregation program, and staff presented several options to consider, including what was referred to as option 3 in my June 11th memo, for a program that included 100% renewable energy at a rate match to the ComEd rate. However, during those discussions, staff and the city attorney recommended gathering more information on whether this program fit into the intent of the aggregation program as it was originally adopted as part of the Plan of Operation and Governance back in 2012. Since that time, City Attorney Lenneman has reviewed the plan and related materials and has recommended amendments to the Plan of Operation and Governance because at the time the aggregation program was reviewed and adopted by Council in 2012, this alternative model was not available and part of the discussion. Because the state law does not provide a process for amending the Plan of Operation and Governance, the city attorney is also recommending that we follow the same process that was followed to adopt the original plan, which includes 2 public hearings. So the public has an opportunity to comment and be part of the process of amending the plan. Included in my backup information for this item is a memo from me, as well as a copy of the Plan of Operation and Governance and a timeline that staff put together for completing the process of the 2 public hearings with all the notice requirements, and then committee of the whole meeting follow-ups to review and consider the amended plan. At this time, we're not asking City Council to take any action to extend the electric aggregation program or to adopt this alternative program. These steps are just required so that the City Council has the option to consider this alternative program next year in anticipation of the October 2021 renewal of the aggregation program. So if there are no other questions, I would then ask Alderman Goodman to read the public comment, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
You're muted, Alderman.
Alderman Goodman, you're muted.
Thank you. I will go ahead and read the email from the resident. It's from another letter from Laura Hewell, and the subject is municipal aggregation. She says, I have concerns about municipal aggregation. I worry that these aggregation contracts can be sort of a shell game with companies moving RECs around and telling communities that they are buying clean renewable energy. RECs can be old, which reflects little and new investment in renewable energy. As a Warrenville resident who cannot do home solar, I would like to see the city work harder to invest in renewable energy in Illinois and built by Illinois workers. Can the companies produce proof that they're actually investing in renewable energy? People who think that their home energy is clean because of the aggregation arrangement probably don't make the same efforts to conserve energy and make their homes and energy use efficient. Participation in aggregation means that we cannot participate in using our appliances at off-peak hours, for example, as Commonwealth Edison offers. Perhaps the city itself is not motivated to conserve energy, to be energy efficient, or to invest in renewable energy. The state of Illinois is considering a bill, the Clean Energy Jobs Act, which will mandate a path to reduced reliance on fossil fuel energy. I do not know the impact of such a law on municipalities, but I believe it is incumbent upon the city to understand it. We know we have few years left to begin a serious transition away from fossil fuel and toward renewable energy. There will be a point at which it cannot be avoided. The costs of fossil fuel damage in terms of human health, financial losses, and the deteriorating quality of life and environment, which we already experience, will accelerate. Now would be a good time to begin to plan how to be more sustainable as a community. Failing that, future citizens will wonder what were they thinking. Thank you for your service in addressing these challenges. It is a tough time to be a leader, but I trust that the city administration and elected officials are up to the job. Sincerely, Laura Hewell. We will go for questions and comments, beginning with the mayor.
Thank you again. Well, I support the staff recommendation. This is an interim step towards achieving what we plan to do early next year. So I think we're moving ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Ashour.
No questions.
Thank you. Alderman Berry.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Bevere.
No questions at this time.
Thank you. Alderman Davalos.
Yes, I'm assuming the staff is recommending 3. I'm just reading the backup here, or was reading. They're recommending 3, right? Or it sounded like they weren't recommending anything. They just wanted some kind of guidance.
All right, we'll go to Assistant City Administrator White.
Thank you. I think, Alderman Davalos, that you're referring to the memo from June 11th. That was the original memo that referenced option 3. I included that as part of the backup to just refresh everyone's memory about what that option included. Tonight's direction is included in the memo dated September 21st. We're asking council to essentially direct the city attorney to draft the amendments to the city's plan of operation and governance to allow for this alternate aggregation program or model to be considered in the future, and direct staff to proceed with the public hearing process.
Yes, and then there's a timeline that's set forward. I think that was Exhibit A, but the timeline is Exhibit B. So if you flip ahead a few pages, you can see you're not just approving a change, but there's also the electric aggregation renewal process dated October 2021.
Thank you. Yes, I did see that. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm next. I have received a couple of comments from people on the EAC and other environmentally minded residents asking about Eligo Energy, the new aggregation supplier. I guess they've had some negative publicity lately. The city of Arlington Heights decided not to move forward with a similar sort of program to the one that we were presented as option 3 last time because of Eligo's history of committing fraud and paying big fines to the state of Illinois.
So with the inclusion of this alternate program, we would go out to bid in probably May, June of next year and look at what other options are out there. Eligo is not the only supplier that offers this alternative program. I believe MC Squared was the other company that also offers this type of an alternative aggregation program. And at that time, we could review and consider all the options, and council would be able to select whichever vendor was the most competitive in terms of bidding that they felt comfortable in terms of supplying the service. I'm not 100% familiar with recent issues with Eligo. I do know when we were reviewing the aggregation program recently, there was a former situation where, and I'm recalling from memory, but I believe they had hired a third-party company to do some door-to-door solicitation for them. That company was being not completely forthcoming or honest with the program or how the electric aggregation program worked. This was not a municipal aggregation. This was a door-to-door supply contract, individual contract with homeowners or account holders at the time. They realized that that was going on based on some complaints and took action to correct those issues before the state intervened. And as far as I know, since then, they have been complying with all of the requirements from the state to follow in terms of the aggregation supply at a municipal level and as an individual supplier.
Thank you, that's helpful. I know that some of the residents were concerned seeing the name on the opt-out notice and Googling them. There have been some very feisty hearings recently in Arlington Heights with concerns. So just wanted to make sure that, going forward, if we do go out for bid on this, if people have concerns about any particular suppliers, that they can bring it forward at that time. That's all I have. Alderman Krischel.
No questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
No questions.
Thank you. Is anyone prepared to bring a motion?
Alderman Berry?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the city council direct the city attorney to draft amendments to the city's electric power aggregation plan of operation and governance to allow an alternate aggregation model and direct staff to proceed with the public hearing process.
Second, Alderman Davalos.
Motion by Alderman Berry, second by Alderman Davalos. If there are any further comments or questions, please speak up, identify yourself. Seeing none, I will take the roll call. Alderman Ashour.
Aye.
Alderman Berry.
Aye.
Alderman Bevere.
Aye.
Alderman Davalos.
Aye.
Alderman Goodman votes aye. Alderman Krischel.
Aye.
And Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. That finishes item number 5. Moving on to item number 6, the consideration of the fiscal year 2022 budget preparation and adoption timeline. Finance Director Dahlstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. While I hardly believe I'm saying this already before you for consideration tonight is the budget preparation and adoption timeline for the fiscal year 2022 budget. I will point out in there the significant dates. While all dates are in the budget are significant, some of the more significant ones are beginning on the February 1st of 2021 would be the first departmental presentation, which would take place at a city council meeting. The following week, there would be the administration and public works departmental presentation. And following that, on the 16th, which would be a Tuesday of February, that would be the finance and police departments. The proposed budget itself would be distributed on March 1st. The city council budget workshop is proposed for Saturday, March 13th of 2021, beginning at 9 a.m. And that's the annual meeting that we do have. There is an opportunity for city council members to have individual meetings with myself and the city administrator. those would occur the week before and the week after that city council budget workshop. So it would start on March 8th and go through March 19th. The final budget consideration then would occur on April 19th of 2021. That would be the adoption of the final budget ordinance, the citywide work plan, and the authorized strength ordinance. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Finance Director Dahlstrand. We'll go through everyone to see if they have any questions, beginning with the mayor.
Thank you. No questions.
Alderman Ashour.
No questions.
Alderman Berry.
No questions.
Alderman Bavir.
No questions.
Alderman Davalos.
No questions.
I have none. Alderman Krischel.
No questions.
Alderman Wilson.
No questions.
I would entertain a motion.
Alderman Ashour, recommend the city council approve the fiscal 2022 budget preparation and adoption timeline as presented, including a city council budget workshop on Saturday, March 13th, 2021.
Second, Alderman Davalos.
We have a motion and a second. We'll go through the roll. Alderman Ashour.
Aye.
Alderman Berry.
Aye.
Alderman Bavir.
Aye.
Alderman Davalos.
Aye.
Alderman Goodman votes aye. Alderman Krischel.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
All right, that item passes. We are going to switch the order of items 7 and 8 in the agenda because the discussion of the holiday schedule should precede the discussion of the meeting schedule based on that holiday schedule. So we will go directly to item number 8, a discussion of the city holiday schedule for calendar year 2021 and beyond. And we will go to Deputy Clerk Rivetti.
Thank you. The holiday schedule is presented for your consideration. Just wanted to note the number of holidays that we offer employees, and we've also added or included for reference the state of Illinois holidays for 2021 and the federal holidays for 2021, which I don't see was actually included in the packet. But if you need that as a reference, we do have that as well. I believe City Administrator Copley had some concerns about the holiday schedule, so I'll turn it over to him.
Yes, and there was an email that went out with additional backup material today, which I hope you can all access at home on your computers for the city holiday information. We'll go to City Administrator Copley.
Thank you. Excuse me. One thing off the start, it just says it's informational, or it looks like it's just informational in a discussion on the agenda. That was my mistake. It is actually, we're looking for direction and a recommendation to the council. So it is an action item on the agenda, just for clarification. There was a memo in the packet that we collaborated on in staff with my name on it that does discuss the various issues. And for credit, Alderman Goodman had raised this issue back in June with me, just discussing whether or not we should look at alternate holidays. There are different ones that various businesses or other governmental bodies have. Some are standard national holidays, others honor certain different individuals. And there are some holidays that the state or federal government have that the city does not. One very obvious example is Martin Luther King's birthday. The city is not closed. Another would be Veterans Day. Many governmental bodies are closed that day. The city never has been. There is an event and a honoring that the local veterans, VFW and now the American Legion with them, does in the community, and many city officials are there for it, but we are not closed that day. But you will notice banks, postal authorities, state and federal government offices, generally are closed for those. And there's many others you'll see in the packet in the backup. Dawn was very helpful in looking those up and providing that information as alternates. You'll also notice we just got that information back from the page mayors and managers, which is very helpful and timely. One of the things that jumped out to me right away is that of the 21 respondents, the city is of the highest number of set holidays. Now, some others, when you read the details, and this is a 3-item survey, it's not a comprehensive forensic analysis by any means, but we have the highest number of set holidays tied with just one other community. The average is 9 or 10 per community. That's all good and fine, but I would advise or request, I guess recommend, maybe is a better word, that we not add holidays if there's a change to be made, that we look at making some adjustments to the existing ones. A very significant note that is noted in or included with the memo is that the 3 city union contracts, which is the majority of our employees, are covered by one of those. The holidays that are currently given by the city are included in all of those contracts, meaning we need to negotiate those changes. That was one of the issues that came up when this first came up in June. My thinking at the time was we were going to do a quick 1-year negotiations to get through this current difficult year. And then we would start negotiating the longer term contracts, and that would be a good time to bring these up if the council wishes to do that. I was completely incorrect on the quick turnaround on those 3 contracts. We are still negotiating all 3. One is much closer than the others, but 2 may turn into long-term negotiations anyway. We don't know yet. I can't speak to those. It's not set, but that's going to be an ongoing process. The other thing that I would ask for administrative consistency and trying to manage and keep our costs under control is to do our best to have all the employees under the same holidays that are set. It can be a challenge to try to have different parts of your department. It's for the unionized departments where most of our employees are, to have some employees off on one day and some on the others. But more information is in that memo, and if there's, we need input from the council if there is interest in changing. Our recommendation, as you'll see, is that if there is interest in changing the holidays we currently have to move beyond the status quo, which is certainly possible, that we be given direction to set up a process to move towards that, get input from aldermen and from our employees, and work towards that so that we can negotiate that out and get input from everyone. But we need your direction on how you'd like to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. And just as an observation, there are 10 days that are federal holidays, 13 days you have listed here that are state holidays. And in the memo that you sent, there's between 8, 9, 10, and 11. No, actually, Elmhurst is at 7.5. So 7.5 to 11 cities holidays in the DMMC member survey. Just for context. All right, so let's start the discussion with the mayor.
Thank you. I'm content with the holiday schedule as presented this evening.
Alderman Ashour.
I agree with the current holiday schedule.
Alderman Berry.
I also agree with the current holiday schedule.
Alderman Bevere.
I agree with the schedule.
Alderman Davalos.
Yeah, I think I agree with the schedule. A couple questions. So this 1 year we have 12 because of the way New Year's Day falls, right? Okay. So will that mean 1 less for the following year? I mean, it'll be 10 instead of 11?
Yes.
Okay. And employees, I don't know the contract really well, but employees have personal days too, that, right? Don't they? Or they just have this combination of sick, personal, vacation, and it's all rolled in together?
There's an allotment of sick time for each year, but employees may use, excuse me, I believe it's the same for the contracts as the non-contract employees. They can use up to 3 days of their sick time as personal days each year. That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll just observe during my time that part of the reason for this discussion is a conversation I had with Alderman Widener, who isn't here today. So it's too bad that he's not able to be part of this conversation. He had expressed, I think we both expressed some interest in talking about this more after the state decided to make Election Day a state holiday. And it seemed like a good time to have that conversation, especially considering the pandemic. I think given the consideration of city holidays is tied very closely to union contracts, it doesn't feel like an urgent matter when we have to discuss this so far in advance. So we can always have these conversations again, but if we don't have the conversation now when union contracts are pending, then by the time we discuss the holiday schedule again next fall, the contracts may already be set in stone, and then it's too late to have the conversations. So it just felt like, even though everyone thinks, oh, well, you know, we should just do what we've always done, there are reasons to have these conversations far ahead of making any actual contemplated changes. And I know that it's very important as elected officials to understand and encourage everybody to vote on Election Day. The other discussion that I think Administrator Coakley had mentioned was Martin Luther King Day. We've never had that observed as a holiday. We also don't observe Columbus Day or Juneteenth. It should become a much bigger commercial holiday this year for many private businesses, although probably not as many governmental bodies because of long-term constraints in the timing and planning and union contracts that make it harder to be quite as nimble in changing such things. But it does seem to be a definite trend moving in one direction. So if there's interest in changing any designated holidays, then we should continue having these conversations in the future, talking about whether or not Martin Luther King Day or Election Day are worthy holidays for us to celebrate. And they both seem that way to me. Thank you. Alderman Krischel is next.
I'm good with the holiday schedule as presented as well.
Alderman Wilson.
I agree with the present schedule.
All right, and we do need a motion on item 8.
I'll recommend the City Council adopt a proposed holiday schedule for calendar year 2021.
Second, Alderman Krischel.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and we will call the roll. Alderman Ashour.
Aye.
Alderman Berry.
Aye.
Alderman Bouvier.
Aye.
Alderman Davalos.
Aye.
Alderman Goodman votes aye. Alderman Krischel.
Aye.
And Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
All right, I'll move back to item number 7, the calendar year 2021 city meeting schedule and committee of the whole. We'll go again to Deputy Clerk Gerbetti.
Thank you. Given that you've approved the holiday schedule, we're offering the City Council and Committee of the Whole meeting schedule as it's presented.
All right, any questions or comments? Alderman Ashour.
No questions or comments?
Alderman Berry.
No questions.
Alderman Bouvier.
No questions.
Alderman Davalos.
No questions.
Alderman Goodman has nothing. Alderman Krischel.
No questions.
Alderman Wilson.
No questions.
Thank you. We do need a motion on item 7.
Just a minute here.
Alderman Berry, I'd like to make a motion to recommend the City Council approve the calendar year 2021 City Council and Committee of the Whole meeting schedule.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll call the roll. Alderman Ashour.
Aye.
Alderman Berry.
Aye.
Alderman Bouvier.
Aye.
Alderman Davalos.
Aye.
Alderman Krischel,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
and Alderman Goodman votes aye. The motion carries. Item number 9 is the informational updates on the Administration, Finance, and Police Department fiscal year 2021 work plans and decision packages. I'll go through the list once to see if anyone has any comments or questions on these items. Alderman Ashour,
No comments or questions.
Alderman Berry,
No comments, no questions.
Alderman Bevere,
No questions.
Alderman Davalos.
No questions.
Alderman Goodman wants to thank the Administration Department and the Public Police Department for the updates. I appreciate seeing how many things you've checked off. It looks like a lot of progress is being made. Alderman Krischel,
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Alderman Wilson.
No questions.
All right, that ends item number 9. We've reached the end of the agenda. That someone needs to make a motion.
I move to adjourn.
Second, Alderman Ashour.
We have a motion and a second, and I will go through the list one last time. Alderman Ashour,
Aye.
Alderman Berry,
Aye.
Alderman Bevere,
Aye.
Alderman Davalos,
Aye.
Alderman Goodman votes aye. Alderman Krischel,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Night, everyone.